Another Fox News alert. A federal judge moments ago issuing a temporary restraining order stopping the release of downloadable blueprints for 3D printed guns. Earlier today, President Trump tweeted that he is consulting with the NRA on this controversy. Correspondent Anita Vogel tells us tonight several states are actually suing the Trump administration to block this release.
For God's sakes, when it comes to something as basic as public safety, our State Department saying, hey, this is a giveaway for terrorists.
Fear and outrage from the Washington State Attorney General as he files suit against the State Department on behalf of nearly a dozen states over the government's decision to allow a Texas company to publish files detailing how to build a gun with something as simple as a 3D printer. Critics say these ghost guns will be made of plastic with no serial numbers and will be practically invisible.
These firearms will be undetectable. They will pass through metal detectors without a blip, a buzz, or a bell that is going off.
These ghost guns are the new wave of American gun violence.
Because the State Department is charged with regulating the sale of firearms outside of the U.S., it was the agency which blocked Texas company Defense Disrupted after it briefly published the gun blueprints in 2013. The company then sued the State Department, the owner Cody Wilson claiming his free speech rights were being violated.
The government does not have the power to tell people they can't post information on the internet. That's a violation of free speech. Also, state law is trumped by federal law.
Just last month, the State Department settled that suit, saying certain firearms and related items are already widely available for commercial sale.
The U.S. State Department gave our client a license to post these files online. So this is an unconstitutional action in every respect.
This didn't happen by accident. The Trump administration, pushed by the gun activists, did this.
Defense Distributed vowed that as of August 1st, midnight tonight, the age of downloadable guns would formally begin. But Brett, as you noted at the top, within the last half hour, a district judge in Seattle has granted a temporary restraining order, meaning the company, Defense Distributed, cannot publish those pictures of 3D guns online for the time being. We will be following this story and see where it goes from here. Brett, back to you.
We will. Anita, thank you. President Trump asks his chief of staff to stay on through 2020. We'll get reaction to that and all the day's news from the panel when we come back.
No reason to be doing this other than my sense of service to the country. That's my #1 motivation, always has been for my whole life. It is the most important thing I've ever done in my life, because if the administration fails, if the President of the United States is uninformed one time and makes the wrong decision, that's on me. And those decisions at his level are so critical that people's lives obviously depend on it. So I'm in for the long haul.
Chief of Staff John Kelly here on Special Report. Despite stories like these from the New York Times, how long can John Kelly hang on? CBS News may be on the way out. NBC News, basically he's leaving, and the Wall Street Journal, as well as some reporting that we had here on Fox that he may be leaving. John Kelly is staying on, according to the White House. The president asking him, 1-year anniversary yesterday, tweeting out congratulations, but asking him to stay on to 2020, and sources say he has said yes. Let's start there with the panel. Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. And because he's a good egg, we have Greg.
Ah, nice.
Co-host of The Five, Greg Gutfeld, whose new book, Gutfeld Monologues, is out today. You know, it was the retribution, you know.
It was a good rhyme, Brett.
Thank you very much. What happened to Dana?
I don't know. No. I think the whole segment should be about what happened to Dana.
All right, let's get back to that in a second. John Kelly, Jonah, staying on. I mean, just it's like heads are exploding in Washington.
Yeah,
How could this happen?
The rumor mill was very, very strong. The reporting seemed to be pretty clear about this, and I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that at the very minimum, we can say that this kills this story for a little while. But the president has said he has full faith and confidence in various other members of his cabinet who haven't endured much longer than that. I would still be surprised if John Kelly is actually there through 2020, but it seems like they wanted the end of the story, and John Kelly, my understanding is that John Kelly does not function like a normal chief of staff. Normally, a chief of staff funnels the information and personnel who get to the president. He's more like a senior advisor who does manage down, but doesn't manage up the way traditional chiefs of staff do. And so it's interesting. I don't have a great theory about why this got a 180.
Mom?
Yeah. First of all, if he does make it all the way to 2020, and we really have no idea if he will, that will be a very long time.
The longest.
That will be the longest. I think John Kelly managed to bring some order and discipline to the White House, but the president doesn't want to be managed in the way a normal chief of staff, a typical chief of staff would do. He likes freewheeling conversations. He likes to talk to whoever he wants to, whenever he wants to. So Kelly's efforts to kind of control the information flow to him, that's where he didn't succeed.
But you know, Molly, the president also likes to break up White House narratives or Washington narratives, like just say that's not true.
We could not have had more anonymously sourced stories saying that this man was on his way out within hours or minutes or days. Certainly he wouldn't last past the end of the summer. We had so much reporting saying that. So at the very least, this story, which also includes, it's also sort of anonymously sourced, but the White House is not knocking it down. They always knock down those other stories. They always call them fake news. They're not doing that in this case. I do think that's significant, but maybe the real lesson is that we should care less about palace intrigue and more about the actual policies that are coming out of this White House, and the fact that there are people who support these policies and make it more effective.
Greg.
Molly's absolutely right. The loser here is the person who keeps saying sources say, that in that sentence that begins with "we hear." Every time I read "we hear" or "sources say," I know it's wrong. And the great trick here, what Trump is doing, is that the assumption is not that just that John Kelly's going to be there through 2020, but so is Trump. Because he's basically making you think past, oh, okay, he's not going to be impeached, he's going to be around. So it's pretty cool. And Kelly is part of that good cop, crazy cop framework, like Lethal Weapon, where Mel Gibson is Riggs, and Kelly is what's his name, Murtaugh, the Danny Glover character. Because you got to have it makes America feel good to see those guys in that office, to see Pompeo, to see Mattis, to see Bolton, and to see Kelly, because they kind of counter this impulsive, rogue, Mel Gibson-like president.
So do we get a special report monologue?
Yes.
Is that the second iteration of the book? Mara, I want to talk about this shutdown back and forth. Take a listen to this.
It's just completely concerning to us. It's consternation, not even frustration at this point, as to why Congress won't do its job and pass meaningful immigration reform.
I'm hoping we're going to be able to resolve this issue. We know it's important to him. Most Republicans, including myself, agree that we ought to fund the wall.
Leader McConnell and I have had almost daily conversations about the appropriations bill, and we're making very good progress. The fly in the ointment here, of course, is the president. Whenever he gets involved, he seems to mess it up.
You know, now there seems to be this kind of walk back that he has told staff that he's not talking about a shutdown before the midterms, but then tweets out, I don't care about the political ramifications.
This is a threat he's made before about how he is willing to shut down the government in order to get what he wants, funding for the wall and other immigration measures. But this one was diluted pretty pretty quickly. First of all, he said he didn't have a red line in terms of how much money he wanted for the wall. It wasn't clear whether he was talking about pre the election or afterwards. And Congress is actually passing appropriations bills for the first time, so he'd have to veto a lot of them if he really wanted to shut down the government. So Congress doesn't want to shut it down. I think he's trying to send a message to his base. I care so much about these immigration issues that I'm willing to do something drastic like shut down the government. But everybody I've talked to doesn't think it's going to happen.
Does it move the needle electorally? Molly?
I think this is an issue where you're just seeing huge division, particularly on the Republican Party. You have the donor base that very much wants to continue the immigration policy as it has been. You have a voter base that has gotten rather sick and tired of continuing those things and not dealing with some of the systematic problems with our immigration policy. So it's hard to say how it plays out because you have a divided group here, the donors versus the voters.
All right, speaking of the elections, the Koch brothers now in the sights of President Trump. Take a listen.
Because of new tariffs, our farmers' livelihoods are at risk. Car makers, factory workers, and manufacturers, too. Farmers want trade, not aid. Tell the administration and Congress open markets and end tariffs.
You know, they're ideologues. They are not just supporting Republicans. They're also supporting Democrats. We're not going to equivocate on who we're going to support. We're supporting Republicans. We're supporting majorities that are going to help this president pass his agenda.
The president tweeting, the globalist Koch brothers, who've become a total joke in real Republican circles, are against strong borders and powerful trade. I never sought their support because I don't need their money or bad ideas. They love my tax and regulation cuts, judicial picks, and more. I made them richer. Their network is highly overrated. I have beaten them at every turn. They want to protect their companies outside the U.S. from being taxed. I'm for America first and the American worker. A puppet for no one. Two nice guys with bad ideas. Make America great again. Strong letter to follow.
I was just going to say that, strong letter to follow.
Look, the simple fact is that, look, first of all, the Koch brother, or the Koch network, 96% of the candidates that they backed in 2016 won their races. 7 out of 8 senators they backed won their races. They're still a very effectual thing. A lot of this has to do with the data that the AFP, which is one of the offshoots of the Koch network, collects that they're not sharing. But this idea, which we heard even more stridently from Steve Bannon recently, that the Kochs need to shut up and get with the program. You know, the Kochs have been in favor of drug legalization, for criminal justice reform. They were against the Iraq war.
I mean, they're libertarian.
They're libertarian, and they have $40 billion apiece. It is, I don't want to sound like Dana Perino, but it is a certain amount of screw you money that allows them to live up to their principles and their ideals in a way that is going to run crosswise. Of course, Ronna Daniels should 100% support every Republican. She's the head of the Republican Party, but that's not the Koch network's job.
Yeah, and they were very slow to embrace Donald Trump, but when he started doing things that they approved of, like the tax cuts and deregulations and judges, they liked that. But they have certain principles. Trade is one of them. And they have so far decided not to support Kevin Cramer in North Dakota.
And my guess is a lot of donors to that network will end up supporting Cramer, but not Trump.
I like the Koch brothers because they drive the left crazy. The left portrays them as these evil power demons. And I think this is just a fight among parents. You know, what's the best meal to have tonight? And the kids should just let it go. I don't think it's that big of a deal. His tweets are just getting longer. That's the real problem. He had they enlarged these tweets, and he still is going past the limit. Yeah. Those were like, that was like a short novel.
A ...
Dana could teach him a thing.
We're not going to talk about Dana in the next panel. Next up, it appears North Korea is still working on its weapons program, and Iran says, you know what? No thanks on talks.